Section 1-2 starts on page 94. And for those of you who work, you may or may not have ever had to get overtime before.
Are we taking notes?
If you want to. Okay. All of your jobs at some point need to require you or offer you overtime, especially if you're an hourly employee. I don't get overtime for my job because I'm a salaried person, but for those of you who work an hourly job, you will get overtime. Okay? So the way you figure that out, there's a couple different things. This is going to be very similar to yesterday's, what you had to do, but there's going to be a couple extra steps today. Because they're not just going to say find the straight time pay like we did yesterday. It's going to be find the overtime pay and then the total pay. Okay? So how you figure out your overtime? Overtime, or the overtime rate, we'll start with that one first, is found by taking your hourly rate and multiplying it by something. Now that something is going to be, typically jobs offer time and a half. If you ever get overtime or over a certain number of hours, or if you're on a holiday, like sometimes I remember one of the jobs I worked at, Sears, I had to work on Easter, so I got time and a half. Okay? Time and a half is the equivalent of 1.5. Some jobs out there, if you have overtime or if you have holiday pay, they might pay you double time, which means you're going to multiply it by 2. So at that point, for the overtime rate, you're going to either take whatever you get normal for your hourly rate, and you're going to either have time and a half, which is 1.5, or double time, which is 2. It won't ever be anything different for these problems. It'll either be time and a half, which is 1.5, or double time, which is 2. Okay? So yesterday, I think we were talking about Ty Wayne's was $12.25 an hour. So $12.25 an hour was his hourly rate. At McDonald's, you get time and a half if you get overtime. So then we would multiply that by 1.5. And what is 12.25 times 1.5? 18 what? 1838. So if Ty Wayne ever gets overtime, which at that point, I'm assuming once you get close, they'll probably start cutting you off and like say, hey, why don't you go home early, just to save on that. But if he were to ever get overtime, it would be $18.38 an hour, or whatever the amount of time that you worked.
Well, somebody gave me 1 hour of overtime.
1 hour?
Yeah.
I know when I was in college, one of the things that I did in the summer was I worked construction. And there was 1 hour, or 1 week, I think I had 70 hours total in.
Oh.
Which means that we had 40 of my regular pay and 30 at time and a half.
Can I get a calculator?
Sure. There's one on my desk. Okay?
Did it pay good?
Did it pay good? No, because they weren't like they are now.
Oh.
I think I was like $9 an hour, which was good for them.
Yeah.
That was also like 17 years ago.
Why do we get
Don't
paid
they
more
make
than
like 17?
everybody in the States?
Why? Because in order to have people stick around here, they got to pay people.
No, like we get paid like $15 an hour, and then you go to Cali and you get paid like $8.
Because the economy is more expensive.
Our economy right now is higher than everybody else's.
Everybody's going to the oil field, so they need to raise prices.
But the oil fields, I thought everybody.
They are slowing down, so a lot of that stuff will probably come down.
Need some gas. In Georgia, gas almost got $5 one time.
Yeah, we did here too.
$5.
But now for a gallon of oil, it's less than $39. So, our barrel, not a gallon. The barrels that are being produced out there. So there, it is slowing down. It is coming down. Daniel.
You got paid better at your construction job than I did in mine this summer.
Yeah.
I was working down in Missouri and I had to lay down concrete, $5 an hour.
Where'd you work? Like what?
It wasn't really a city, it's just on some guy's farm,
Did you know where you were?
Missouri.
I know, but like, where?
What part?
Near Houston in Texas County. Yeah, a little bit further away than you were.
So anyway, that's how, so if Taiwan ever gets overtime, that's how much you're gonna make per hour, okay? Yeah, I know, you don't ever get it, but that's what they have. So that's how you figure out your overtime rate. Then, to figure out the overtime pay, I won't use you as an example because of your 1 hour. It's pretty easy. But overtime pay, then we take the overtime rate, and you multiply it by the number of hours of overtime. So for instance, if I had, in my situation where I had 30 hours of overtime, and if I had made what Taiwan made, I would take 1838 and multiply it by 30. That would be how much I just get in overtime. Okay? Then the last formula that's going to happen today is going to be the total pay. And how you figure that out is you take the straight time pay, which is what you did yesterday. And you add your overtime. Okay? So the only thing that's different about yesterday is yesterday we just had two numbers, we multiplied them together, we were done, right? Today, we still have to do that same step that we did yesterday. Then we got to figure out the overtime pay, which is again another multiplication problem, and then add the two answers when you get done. So there'll
Can we
be
do
three
problems?
parts. Of course. There'll be like 3 parts to each of them. Okay? So on the top of page 95, it says Josie Spelling earns $9 an hour and works 40 hours per week. Because she had to work on Thanksgiving, her employer paid her time and a half for the additional 6 hours she put in. We need to figure out how much she got paid for the week. So, first of all, Josie gets $9 an hour. And how many hours did Josie work? 40. What's 9 times 40? 360. That is the same step as what we did yesterday. Where all we had to do is multiply those two numbers together and we were done. Now, it said that Josie had to work 6 hours on Thanksgiving and her employer paid her time and a half.
She made $81.
So we need to, well, let's back up the train here a little bit. If we had $9 an hour originally, but now we're time and a half, we would have to take 9 times 1.5
She makes 32.
Why 9 times 1.5?
because it said she gets paid time and a half. So if it says time and a half, Courtney, right?
Yeah.
Then you get 1.5 times your hourly rate. If the problem says that you get double time for like holidays or overtime, then you multiply it by 2. Okay?
So it's always going to be a decimal right there?
Or unless it's double time and you get an even amount. So Josie gets $13.50 an hour for overtime. How many overtime hours did she work? 6. Once I multiply that by 6, now I get 81.
She got $441.
So then my final answer is I take the 360, which is the straight time pay, plus the $81, which is the overtime pay, and I get 441. So that's how many hours, or that's how much money Josie got the week of Thanksgiving. Okay? That's number 1. Okay. Number 2. Eddie Lang earns $11.50 per hour. He worked 40 hours plus time and a half for 7. How much did he get? So, first of all, we're at $11.50 for 40 hours of work. What's $11.50 times 40? Say that again, Courtney?
460.
Then, did the problem say time and a half or double time?
Time and a half.
Time and a half. So now you take $11.50, you multiply it by 1.5. How much?
If it says double time, what would we put?
Multiply it by 2.
Get 1725.
1725. And how many hours did Eddie work at 1725?
7.
7. So what is 1725 times 7?
120.
How much?
128. Like 120 and 8 cents. It's 78.
120 and
8 cents.
8 cents?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's 78 cents, but the 5 is after the 7, so you round it up to. What would you just do?
Hold on.
Right?
I got 120.75.
Yeah, you got. There should be when you got a nickel,
Yeah,
and we
I
got 7
120.75.
nickels. That we shouldn't have. We should be like a 25 or a 75.
It's a 75.
Yeah, we're rounding
When you
it.
round it,
Yep,
the
round to the
five.
nearest penny. So we would be at 75 cents. Because when you were rounding it to 0.8, that was rounding it to the nearest dime. Okay, so always to the nearest penny. So that's 2 decimal places. So I got $4.60 in straight time pay, and I got $120.75 in overtime pay. How much money did Eddie get?
580.75.
$5.80 and 75 cents. Yay. That's number 1 and number 2. This is how the entire assignment's going to be.
Don't we 460 times 120 something, or we add it?
Add it. Okay, the chart. Here's how it works. On 3 through 8, it says the first column, hourly pay, and then underneath it, it says 40 hours. That means you get 40 hours at that rate. So for part A on those, for number 3, it says $6 an hour, but underneath it, it says 40 hours. So that means you're getting $6 an hour for 40 hours. So what's the straight time pay? What's 6 times 40? 240. That's part A for number 3.
You gotta do 6 times time and a half.
Then it goes on to say overtime rate, and it says 1 1/2. That's the same as 1.5. Make it easier on your calculator and you. Okay? So in order to get the next column for part B, we're going to take 6 times 1.5, which was how much?
9.
9. And then you're going to take 9 times, how many hours of overtime was it? 8, which is 72. That's part B. Then what do you think you do for part C?
240 plus 72.
Absolutely. 240 plus 72 is how much?
312.
312. And I'm done. So, as a real quick question for you guys, how many points is 3 through 8 worth each?
3.
3. Why, Courtney?
Because there's 2 steps.
Yeah, there's 3 parts. On every single one of these, they have 3 steps, just so that you know. Then when you get down to 9 through 12, the only difference is, instead of it looking in chart format, they give it to you with words. So on number 9, it says, Stephen Kellogg, a machine operator, works an hourly rate of $10.60 and earns time and a half if he works any overtime. Is any of that important? Let me read it again. Stephen Kellogg, a machine operator, works an hourly rate of $10.60 per hour and earns time and a half if he works any overtime. Is any of that important?
The 1060.
Time and a half.
The time and a half and the $10.60. So you know how much he gets paid an hour and you know what the multiplier rate is. Given this, last week he worked 37 hours plus 8 hours of overtime. What is his straight time pay? What is his overtime pay? And what is the total pay? That's 3 different questions. It's just like the chart. It's just written in a question form instead of a chart form. Okay? So, again, how many hours did Stephen work?
8. Wait.
37.
37. So what's $10.60 times 37?
392 and 20, well, 2 cents.
20 cents.
0.2 or 0.02?
0.2.
Okay,
with this one.
so 20 cents. Then 1060 at time and a half is what you guys told me, which is 1.5.
15.9.
And how many hours?
8. You made 127.
127.20. So this 392.20 was part A. This 127.20 was part B. And then part C is you add them together. And how much money did Stephen make that week?
$784.40.
Let's try that again.
It's a big number, huh?
I did that wrong.
Shouldn't be in the sevens.
Yeah.
519 and 40 cents.
I think I pressed one
I like how we do that.
And the only thing, yeah. And the only reason why I knew Taiwan yours was wrong is because if I got a 3 plus a 1, that's only 4, and you were saying 7. Even if I carry anything, it's probably not going to be that high.
Yeah. I
So.
think I pressed them wrong.
And that happens.
I would say that too.
Be very careful in typing numbers in, because there's sometimes when we get our numbers way off because of that. So as far as our steps go, that's what we're doing. So we're just adding an additional step than what we did yesterday. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So on page 95, we're 1 through 12.